I'm kind of afraid to make this video because I'm not trying to bash anyone or call them stupid or say that just because you are this type means that you do this. I'm kind of speaking from my experience.
Talking with famous people.
And as an NI user, and I guess I would just like to say that I have observed very frequently since I have engaged in conversations with people about personality type or even not about personality type. I've realized very frequently that NPs will use straw man arguments or use the straw man fallacy against me time and time again. And the reason why I want to explain this in a video is because I don't necessarily think that NPs do this on purpose, or maybe they don't even know that they do this. So, and I think that it is directly correlated to NI and NE. This is not just me getting my frustration out against one or two people. Like, this is how NE works, which is different from how NI works. And
Okay. Let me go a little faster on this thing here.
As far as functions go, too much of one function or too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. That's sort of my philosophy, is that everyone, no matter what personality type you are, if you lean so heavily on your top function and you haven't sort of begun the self-actualization process or tried to achieve some sort of balance, then there's going to be some parts of your perception that are off balance. And so this is just one that I've noticed. Okay, that's long enough disclaimer. As you can see, I'm trying really hard to prevent any straw man arguments in the comments. But okay, what I would like to share is, for those of you who don't know what a straw man argument is, it pretty much is just the idea that if I, Meghan LeVota, and ENFJ were to make a proposition or share my opinion or make an argument or say something, and then if you, listening to this, were to then make a counter argument to me, but if all of your premises and everything you say don't have anything to do with what I said, and you are attacking something that you think I said, that is pretty much a straw man argument. You are attacking, it's like I make an argument and then the person that tries to do a counter argument to me is attacking a completely different argument that has nothing to do with what I said. So
That's not a straw man. That's shifting ground. Okay? You don't like it when people shift ground. And it is true that a lot of people shift ground. And I don't blame you for not liking it when people shift ground. But that's not a straw man. A straw man is taking what you said, reducing it to a simpler form of it, and then knocking that over, usually. Or a straw man can also be a circumstance where you create an argument as people sometimes say blah blah blah. However, that's wrong because blah 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 blah. But the thing that you create there that people sometimes say is not anybody's actual argument. It's a straw man. It's not a real argument made by a real person, right? So, like right now, I'm responding specifically to your definition of straw man. I'm not responding at all to your claim, which is upcoming, that any shifts ground, which is the term you mean to make here. Shifting ground is saying I'm not going to be responsive. I'm non-responsive to what you're actually saying. I'm just making arguments I want to make, and if I then additionally try to place those arguments onto you, well, then it's just misattribution. I don't know what else you'd call that. You know, failing to attribute the argument to the correct source. The argument may or may not be a straw man. If it's responding to something that somebody else didn't say, then but it claims that it's responding to an argument that's being made somehow. In that regard, then I guess it would be a straw man. But anyway, I don't mean to pick on your use of terms here. It's not that important, really.
The way that NE works is that NE is about possibilities. You all know that. But NE has a hard time differentiating between this possibility is more probable than this possibility. This is a good possibility. This is a bad possibility. They keep their minds open. Where NI, on the other hand, I see all these possibilities and I feel the need to organize them. I see all this and I see it as noise, and I want to find the signal in the noise. And everything that I say, I'm all about hitting the nail on the head. And I feel like NE does not hit the nail on the head. They hit the nail more times around a general cluster of something. And that's just sort of how it works. Not one is better than the other. I'm not trying to say that NI is better than NE, but the way it works is that NE, when you say something, the NE is not narrowing in on your point. NE is thinking about all of the possibilities of how what you said could have been interpreted to other people based on their past experience or based on their worldview, based on their emotions at the time. NE can hear what you said and think, oh, she could have meant this, she could have meant that, she could have meant this. And NE can notice all of the connotations to what you said. And this can...
That's that last bit you just said there, Meghan LeVota, and not the part before that matters. So I can understand all the... I know what's implied by what you say. I can lay out in front of me a splay of different interpretations. And you're right that sometimes based on my emotions, and sometimes based on my past experience, very rarely based on my past experience. Because I'm in NE Dom, I don't actually use SI as much of a guide. I use it more as a launching spot. But sometimes based on my emotions, like if Kimberly's hurt my feelings, I'll lay out a splay of possible interpretations and interpret the worst possible meaning that can be inferred from what she said and say, you just indicated this to me. Now, is that a straw man? No. It's saying, these are the implications of your words. And usually, I'm pretty fair about it. I make a serious effort to be fair. The problem with including the NTPs in this equation of yours is that we're constrained by TI. Or we're substantially constrained by it. So we want to be fair. We try to be fair, usually. And there's going to be a factor of how much damage the individual has as well. But in order to not straw man you at all, let me point out that you did say earlier, it's in your disclaimer, that it's contingent on the degree of actualization. I think for NTPs, actualization is about recognizing how they use TI, sometimes aggressively, sometimes cuttingly or diminishingly to others, in ways that can be at first in life blind to that quality. So NTPs have a different actualization arc. NFPs, I find, do shift ground for sure, and that's frustrating sometimes. I don't shift ground, and I would say I don't strawman people. Interestingly, NFPs accuse me of strawmanning them. I've had that occur, like Sauce did, and I wasn't strawmanning him at all. I've been strawmanned by Susie, who's an NTP. But in the heat of an argument, I mean, people commit all sorts of ill-advised rhetorical mistakes. Let's see what else you have to say.
Make high stack NE users get a little bit confused in general by people in life, but they thrive in that chaos, so it doesn't really matter because NE users don't care nearly as much as trying to, hit the nail on the head and understand deeply like this sort of one way, because NE doesn't want there to be just one way. NE wants to live in that realm full of multiple interpretations of one thing. So because NE views things that way, what happens is I will say one thing that will remind the NE user of an entire cluster of things that, in my opinion, have absolutely nothing to do with what I was talking about. And it can be quite insulting to my NI, who I've spent the time trying to narrow down my idea. And so to see an NE user then re-broaden my idea whenever I intentionally said what I said, I intentionally narrowed that down. And then to watch someone re-broaden what I said and then attack the outskirts of my point, it's kind of gaslighty, and it's not cool. It's not cool at all, because
It's interesting. I like this video, Meghan LeVota. I think it's good. Well, I certainly want to make sure I don't do what you indicate there. Your point here is more interesting than I expected it to be, because you're being more direct, I guess, or you're being more assertive in your presentation and everything that I expected you to be. We can do that. I mean, the thing about NTPs, you got to remember, ENTPs in particular, is we need to be shown the FE frame that we're supposed to be operating in sometimes. And it can be difficult to get us to stop, take a breath, and listen, especially when we're younger. I mean, the thing is, our tool function is TI, and it makes us inherently good listeners to your words. But it doesn't make us necessarily good listeners to your intention or your meaning. And even if we do listen, we may not be in a listening mode. Like, I'm not here to learn. I'm here to, chew gum and kick ass or whatever. It comes from being an action type as well, Meghan LeVota. So, as a knowing type, you run afoul of your intuitive equivalent action types. So for ENTPs and ENFPs, we tend to jump on shit and leap before we look a little bit, and that can certainly lead to what you're talking about, which is this oppositional, contrary approach to communication that leads us to pick at details of what you're saying and attack them without any constructive purpose except to just sort of wantonly use our nature and tool function for rhetorical mayhem. Let's see a little bit more of Meghan. She's cute.
you're attacking me for something on the outskirts of the cluster of my point, whenever I just spent the time to narrow my point down and cut the fat out of my point. Does that make sense? Let me know if it does. Let me know if it doesn't.
What it does, Meghan, it does make sense. So shame on you, any users out there. Stop shifting ground on Meghan LeVota. She is very pretty. Look at her. She's a little cutie pie. I don't mean to reduce you to your appearance, Meghan LeVota. What you're saying is coherent, and I think you've done a good job of distilling down the essence in the first 6 minutes, 46 seconds. Now, you did a pretty poor job of distillation because then you continued on for another 19 minutes. But that's okay. I'm sure it's full of nothing but gold, Meghan LeVota. Nothing but gold. I like your eyebrows. And your eyes. And your nose.
Talking with famous people.
I think I'm gonna go inside and fuck Kimberly now. Okay. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. Hopefully she'll be down. I have to woo her with some kisses and some romantic talk. Hey baby, how you doing? I've been outside watching Meghan LeVota. ooh la la. And Kim will be like, oh good, I was just dreaming about sauce. I'll be like, it's on.